diets may cause depression, and what you can do to improve your brain function right now. Hey everybody, welcome to Health Theory. Today's guest is Dr. Daniel Amen, a double board certified psychiatrist who also happens to be a 10-time New York Times bestselling author. He is arguably the world's foremost expert in brain scanning, and he is responsible for scanning roughly 100,000 brains in his career. Discover magazine named his breakthrough brain imaging work as one of the top 20 stories in science in 2015, and the Washington Post called him the most popular psychiatrist in America. Now, having said all of that, knowing what you know about the brain, how do we take a good brain and make it great?
Well, I love that idea. It's really three simple things. And the first thing is you have to care about it. When I first scanned myself in 1991, it wasn't good. And just the week before, I'd scanned my 60-year-old mother, and she had a gorgeous brain. And so I created brain envy. I wanted her brain. So here I am. I'm a double board certified psychiatrist. So for people who don't know what that means, so I'm a general psychiatrist, and I have a specialty in kids. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'm a physician. I'm highly educated, and I don't care at all about my own brain. Right? I love watching football on Sunday, and when I saw my brain, I'm like, ouch, this can be better. And so how do you make it better? Well, the second thing is you avoid anything that hurts it. I have a mnemonic we can talk about called Bright Minds. It's if you want to keep your brain healthy, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. So, brain envy, gotta care. Avoid things that hurt it. Do things that help it. And so, what have we learned? That exercise boosts blood flow to the brain. Not believing every stupid thing you think calms the anxiety centers in the brain. Things like omega-3 fatty acids. Get your gut right, because your gut makes most of the neurotransmitters in your body. Well, the little tiny habit for brain health is before you go to make any decision, you ask yourself, is this good for my brain or bad for it? And if you love yourself, because it's never about should. As soon as you think you should do something, you won't do it. Just because we're all 4 years old in our head and rebellious. It's you answer the question in a positive way because you love yourself, because you love yourself, your wife, your life, your mission. That's why you do the right thing. Because too often people go, oh, well, I can't have this and I can't have that. And as soon as you get into that deprivation mindset, it's not going to work.
It's really interesting to me how often the answer that you push people towards, whatever their struggle is something that I'll call soft. Love comes up a lot, attachment, not being lonely, like things that you would expect a psychiatrist to give you a pill for. You've traditionally shied away from that. Obviously, it can be very profound, but that you're leading people to do maybe easier or more basic things first. What are some of the just dead simple, easy things that people should be thinking about with protecting the brain? So they want to answer, I want to do something that's good for my brain, but they don't know what that is.
So I went to my daughter's second grade class. And I put 20 things on the board. And I went...
20 things that are good for your brain?
Just
20 things.
10 of them were good, 10 of them were bad. And I'm going to separate them for me. They got them all right.
Really?
Except one thing.
Marijuana?
Orange juice.
Really? Okay.
They put it in the good category, when in fact it's got way too much sugar. And whenever you unwrap sugar from its fiber source, it turns toxic in your body. And so is this good for my brain or bad for it? Or is it good for my child's brain or bad for it? And they come to you and they want to play football. Where does that fall? It falls in the bad category. Brain is soft, about the consistency of soft butter. Your skull is really hard and it has sharp bony ridges. No, don't let them do that. And I had one billionaire, he goes, but my son really wants to do it. And I've hired this, NFL coach. And I'm like, oh, well, if he told you he really wanted to do cocaine, would you go get him a dealer? Because it's the same freaking thing, right? Because I have scanned, we have 150,000 scans on people from 120 countries. And contact sports damage the brain about the same as cocaine.
Whoa. I knew it was bad. I didn't know it was that bad.
So, and we had talked before we started about I tend to get myself in trouble. And about 10 years ago, we started the world's first and largest study on football players, on professional football players. And the level of damage is sad. But 80% of them get better when we put them on a rehabilitation program. So even if you've been bad to your brain, you can make it better, and I can prove it.
I've spoken to my audience about it before, but the thing that led me to you was massive anxiety that seemed to be getting worse by the day. And one of the things that helped me was crushing the ants, the automatic negative thoughts, and becoming a pattern interrupt and stopping that. Walk people through some of the things that aren't necessarily, because we'll get into diet, but that aren't diet related, that are really just the way that they allow themselves to think, whether it's the brain getting stuck and looping around repetitive negative things, whether it's negative thoughts that they never interrupt. Like, what are those things that really cause people problems that they may not even be aware of?
We have a brain health assessment online. People can go to brainhealthassessment.com and go, which of the 16 brain types do you have? So let me take just a step back and I'll answer that question. Whenever I see someone, so if you came to see me, I'm always thinking about the 4 circles of your life. So I'm thinking about your biology. So with anxiety, my first thought is areas in your emotional brain just are working too hard. And so it's driving that anxiety. So what's the biology? What's the psychology, which is how do you think, and the environment that you grew up in? What's the social circle? Because if you're around a lot of irritated, angry, negative people, you're more likely to be anxious. And what's the spiritual circle? Why do you care? Why you're on the planet? What's your deepest sense of meaning and purpose? So I'm always thinking bio, psycho, social, spiritual, and that way I end up helping whole people, not just, oh, you're anxious, take Xanax, because that's the quick answer. That if you go to Kaiser, for example, and I just hired a doctor from Kaiser, and he saw 25 patients a day. So the 25 patient a day answer is Xanax. Is let me give you a benzo. And the problem with it is once you start it, it's insidious. It changes your brain to need it in order to feel normal. And so I'm like, so how else can we quell your anxiety? So there's some simple supplements like GABA, or one of my favorites, magnesium, that can be really helpful. But the psychological one, there was one day I was at work and I saw 4 suicidal patients, and that's hard for me. And then I saw 2 couples who hated each other, and 2 teenagers who ran away from home. And so at the end of the day, I was worn out, and I came home to an ant infestation in my house. And I'm cleaning up thousands of ants, and I'm like, and then it just hit me, ant. Automatic negative thoughts. My patients are infested. And the next day, I went to work with a can of ant spray. And I put it on my coffee table. And I'm like, we need to help you get rid of these things that are infesting your mind. And they liked that. It was just something they could grab onto. So here's the exercise. Whenever you feel sad, or mad, or nervous, or out of control, so I want you to write down what you're thinking. And ask yourself if it's true. And I have a process, I don't know, if you want, we could do it together. Pick a thought, any thought you want to share, and I'll teach you how to put a stake in it.
This is never going to work.
Okay? So here are the 5 questions. Is it true?
It certainly could be true, yeah.
But is it true?
I can't say definitively.
I don't know.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
Because I am not a fan of positive thinking. I'm not.
Interesting.
Positive thinking kills way too many people. I'm a fan of
What do you
accurate
mean it
thinking.
kills too many people? What do you mean?
So they did a study at Stanford, 1921. on 1,548 10-year-old children. And they followed them for 90 years, looking at what goes with success, health, and longevity. And it wasn't the don't worry kids. It wasn't the happy kids. In fact, the don't worry, be happy kids died the earliest from accidents and preventable illnesses. The kids who lived the longest were the conscientious kids. The kids who said they were going to show up at a certain time and they show up on time. The kids who got their homework done. The kids who were responsible, who actually had a bit of anxiety, because anxiety prevents you from driving at 125 miles an hour down the freeway in the rain, right? You need some anxiety. Obviously, too much makes people suffer. So this isn't going to work out. Is it true? I don't know. The second question is, can you absolutely know with 100% certainty it's not going to work out?
No.
No. Third question, how do you feel when you believe the thought it's not going to work out?
Bad. Anxious. You feel uncomfortable, impending doom, this sense that, it's overwhelming, you don't want to look at it, you want to turn away, you want to go do things that are fun, that are just easy, immediate gratification, eating the marshmallow immediately. It's sort of all at a limbic level. It's just emotion.
And then how do you treat other people when you believe the thought?
If I were to give into it, you're going to be grumpier, grouchier, shorter with people, or just sullen and quiet.
Yeah, so is it true? I don't know. Can I absolutely know that it's true? No. How do I feel when I believe the thought? Anxious. Worse. I mean, it's fueling the thing that makes you naturally upset. Fourth question is, who would you be or how would you feel if you didn't have the thought? If you couldn't have the thought?
Certainly better, for sure. And I'm gonna start pushing you, because one, I want this to be useful in my own life, and then two, I want people listening for it to really be useful. I find that there's a certain point where the anxiety kicks over into it feeling purely biological. And what I mean by that is I can't differentiate between being cold and being anxious. They're the same physical sensation. So I'm like, am I just cold, or is this an exacerbation of the anxiety? And so one of the quotes that has just seemed so true to me in my life, and this isn't how they meant it, but this is, you'll understand in a second why it's always rang so true. The only thing to fear is fear itself. So the only thing that I have to fear when it comes to public speaking is anxiety. It's like, if I didn't have to worry about the anxiety, I'm not worried about the performance or the outcome. I've done it so many times. And so before I go on stage, I have to meditate to calm everything down, to slow my breathing, to get the blood back into the right areas of my brain.
So in that situation, there's not negative thoughts that are driving you.
Right, so in the beginning, I had to learn to stop that loop from even starting by killing that initial thought, which is why that was so powerful for me.
So, killing the ants is it's a biological treatment too, because when you believe these negative thoughts, it changes your physiology immediately. So, how would you feel if you didn't have the thought? Better, you said. So the fifth question is my favorite question. It's you take the original thought, this will not work out, and you flip it to the opposite, to the exact opposite, not the narcissistic opposite, which is I will be the best ever. So the opposite of it, this will work out. Do you have any evidence that that's true? If you're thinking about, whatever the situation, it won't work out.
Historical performance, sure.
Just like once in your life or more than once?
Depending on what we're talking about, no, it could be years of success at something.
Right. Somebody on my board just this morning, I'm dumb. And then when we switched it to I'm not dumb, she had like 50 reasons why she wasn't dumb, right? But if you don't challenge your thoughts, if you don't question your thoughts, you believe them 100%, and then you act out of the belief. So learning how to clean that up is really important, but sometimes there are remnants of anxiety that are not driven by the negative thoughts, and their diaphragmatic breathing is so important. So if I was you, Well, and I used to be you, because before I'd speak, I'd be very nervous. And I was on the speech team in college, but I couldn't hold paper in my hand because it would shake. It was like really irritating.
So dirty.
And so I became masterful at diaphragmatic breathing. And it's super simple.
Come here, honey.
I put people in my office on the floor, put a book on their belly, and I teach them when you breathe in, make the book go up. When you breathe out, make it go down. The trick is big breath. Take twice as long to blow it out. So it's like 3 or 4 seconds in, hold it just for a second, and about 8 seconds out. And that triggers a parasympathetic response. So you know the difference between the fight or flight response. You have a sympathetic response where we're really anxious, our hands get cold, so that's the cold connection. They start to sweat, our muscles get tense, our breathing becomes shallow and fast, which is inefficient for the brain. And you want to run away or you want to hit something. You want to trigger the opposite. It's called a parasympathetic response, and that breathing pattern will do it. Also, holding something warm will do it as well. And for some people, they'll just put their hands under warm water. And if you can get in a sauna, that's great, or get in a hot tub. You can't do that before you speak. But.
So what is, like, if somebody comes to you, I know you're going to say that you scan the brain, like it's a bit tough for everybody watching at home, but what are like the basic protocols for some of the most typical things that you see? Are you starting with diet? Are you starting with exercise? Like, how do you get people to take the sort of edge off whatever they might be experiencing?
Well, I'm usually working always in those 4 circles. So, yes, I'll scan them, because if I don't look, I don't know. But not everybody can do it. So in Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, I think that's my book you read. There's questionnaires that go, oh, well, you're more likely to have a limbic issue here, or a basal ganglion anxiety issue with these symptoms, or a prefrontal cortex issue, which is so common for us. And then I'll go, oh, well, if this is likely the issue, these are the supplements I would think about. And I tend to start with supplements. I mean, unless you're schizophrenic or you're a brittle bipolar person, I generally start with supplements first. And so at home, people can go to brainhealthassessment.com, find out which of the 16 types they have, and then we'll work on the biology. Along with biology, yes, you should exercise. Of course you should. And there's certain kinds of exercise, especially coordination exercises. So racket sports, by far my favorite. Very few head injuries, but they work your cerebellum. And the cerebellum, I think of it as the Rodney Dangerfield part of the brain. It gets no respect, even though it's 10% of the brain's volume, but has 50% of the brain's neurons. Can you imagine? Something that has half the brain's neurons actually gets very little coverage in the scientific media.
Yeah, so what is the cerebellum doing? Is it to do with coordination?
Well, that's what they used to think. Yeah, coordination, movement. But now we know 80% of it is dedicated to cognition and emotion.
Cognition in what way? Just like general processing? Or
processing speed.
You want to talk about something near and dear to my heart. I would love to be able to process raw data faster. That's how I think of it. I'm assuming then that's cerebellum. So I start playing table tennis. That's step 1. What else? What am I supplementing? What other activities am I doing?
So, a racket sport. If your wife likes ballroom dancing, become good at it because it's a coordination exercise. And then you want to stimulate it, and there's certain supplements that I actually like theanine, because it helps you feel relaxed, but it really also helps you focus.
And this is over the counter?
Mm-hmm. Rhodiola, ashwagandha, ginseng. We actually make something we like called focus and energy, and we find it stimulates your frontal lobes and your cerebellum at the same time. And then stop hurting it. Alcohol is directly toxic to the cerebellum. I mean, that's why they make you try to walk a straight line, and you can't because your cerebellum's not working. It's being poisoned.
So I hardly ever drink. What are some other things that people do on a day-to-day basis that could be totally just horrific for that?
So if you're playing football, or your kid's playing football, what they're doing is they're banging their frontal lobes, and there's actually this really cool term I like. It's called cross-cerebellar diasthesis. It's like, what does that mean? So you hurt your left frontal lobe, it actually turns off your right cerebellum. And if you hurt your right frontal lobe, it turns off the left cerebellum. And if you're heading soccer balls, you're turning off both sides of your cerebellum. So we just have to do so much better at protecting the brain.
Talk to me about diet's impact on that. What are some main sort of ballpark things that you should be pulling out?
You know, it's not hard. And again, if I put these things on the board, people would get it. Sugar is pro-inflammatory. It increases erratic brain cell firing, and it's addictive. So if you can get rid of or really limit sugar, that's really helpful for people. The more colorful, clean fruits and vegetables, the better. The one misnomer people often have is, oh, I should go on a low-fat diet. The problem with that is 60% of the solid weight of your brain is fat, and low-fat diets can actually trigger depression.
Gucci must be protected.
Somehow.
Outsiders.
Witness the scandalous true story of one woman who would kill to have it all. House of Gucci, rated R.
And so I like healthy fat, fish, although clean fish. And so swordfish is out. Never would have that. It's just loaded with mercury. And I'm a huge fan of salmon, wild salmon, avocados. They're like gut butter, right? It's just a great brain food for you. You have to be calorie smart because 70% of us are overweight, 40% of us are obese. I published 2 studies that show as your weight goes up, the physical size and function of your brain goes down. Should scare the fat off anyone. When I read that, I ended up losing 30 pounds. You know, I'd tried for 30 years, and I just never really had the motivation until I went, I'm not going to have a smaller brain. I'm not going to do that. So clean protein, healthy fat, actually at every meal, because it'll stabilize your blood sugar. One of the biggest things that will steal your mind is have a high fasting blood sugar level. It's actually been shown to be associated with brain atrophy, and it makes your blood vessels brittle and more likely to break. So there's a term I like, I didn't coin it, but I like it, called diabesity. It's a combination of being overweight with high blood sugar. It's a disaster for brain function. And this is why people get addicted. It's carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates. So if you ingest a cupcake, your pancreas sees all the sugar and it sends out an insulin burst. Well, that insulin burst drives tryptophan, the amino acid precursor to serotonin, into your brain. So when you eat bread or pasta or potatoes, your brain likes it because it feels happier, it feels more relaxed. Now the problem is it kills you early. And so you have to sort of take this. But you know, the other thing that drives tryptophan into the brain is exercise. And so, and many of my athletes, they exercise intensely so they don't get depressed. And when they get hurt, they get depressed because they can't get their antidepressant fix. And so they'll go to sugar, and then that'll make them feel terrible about themselves. And so know what's good for tryptophan to getting into your brain, and know what's bad.
So before we started rolling, you said something so fascinating. And you said if I were basically an evil genius and I wanted to just absolutely destroy people's health, I would create what kind of lifestyle?
So let's just take this mnemonic I've created on how to keep your brain healthy. It's called Bright Minds. And so if I was the evil ruler, the B in Bright Mind stands for blood flow. Is I would give all children social media. and video games, and encourage them to play as much as they could, because that would drop blood flow to their brain. Brand new study, the more screen time, smaller the brain. It's a little horrifying. Well, one, they're not going outside. They're not getting exercise. They're not getting the sun. We have a massive deficiency of vitamin D in this country. And exercise increases something called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It helps your brain grow. So we're losing Miracle-Gro. Retirement and aging is the R in bright minds. If I was an evil ruler, I would let everybody retire at 55 and not have to, and then I'd put them in front of the TV there and make them angry at, whatever political fight is going on. The I is inflammation, which comes basically from low omega-3 fatty acid levels, processed foods, gut problems. And so I'd like nobody gets fish in my kingdom. And we don't have fresh food. We basically have fast food restaurants. The G is genetics. And I don't know what you have in your family. In mine, I have heart disease and obesity.
Obesity in a big way in my family.
Yeah, but as we can see, genes are not a death sentence. They should be a wake-up call to do the right things to decrease your genetic vulnerability. So if I was the evil ruler, I would go, you have obesity in your family. I'd do a public campaign. So it's in your family. Why worry about it? Live it up. You're going to die early. Enjoy the path. As opposed to what I think is actually more rational, is you have this vulnerability. You need to be really serious about your health. H is head trauma. I'd encourage all kids to hit soccer balls with their head, to play tackle football, to ride horses. And people go, well, why are you down on horses? It's like, well, what killed Superman? What's a horse? I can't tell you the number of patients I see who had serious addictions because they had fallen off of a horse and had no frontal lobe function. The T is toxins. So if I was the evil ruler, I would get rid of all of the environmental protections so that we are filled with air pollution, water pollution. And I would tell the manufacturers they don't have to put the ingredients on the labels, not only for food, but also for personal products. And one of the things like parabens and phthalates are hormone disruptors. And aluminum, when we're putting them on our body, whatever goes in your body, goes on your body, goes in your body, becomes your body. I think of alcohol as a health food. We certainly had that craze. I would legalize, not only legalize marijuana, but it's like, let's not say it's good for us, because all of my published research says it's bad. Now, does that mean if someone's dying of cancer and it'll help their pain and help the nausea and help them eat? God bless them, right? I mean, so let's be rational about it. I just saw someone who's been smoking pot for 50 years, and his brain was remarkably older than he was. The M is mental health. And if I was the evil ruler, I'd create CNN and Fox News. And that ruins people's health, because they always lead with negative. They increase anger and frustration and polarization. The more you're exposed to it, the angrier you get, and the more it separates you from other people. The I is immunity and infections. I would belittle people who are testing patients for Lyme disease. My great stories are patients who have Lyme. One girl, she's 16, and she became psychotic after a visit to Yosemite, and she had 3 psychiatric hospitalizations. None of the medications worked. She became a shell of herself. She came to our clinic. And I'm like, so what happened at Yosemite? And her mother said, we were surrounded by 6 deer, and we thought it was a magical moment. She got bit by a deer tick that caused Lyme, that then caused her to lose her mind. And on an antibiotic, she got her mind back. The N is neurohormone deficiencies, and so letting kids hit things with their head actually drops their hormone level. And so I test for that. Diabesity, I'd create the American food system. ISIS has nothing on our food industry. The real, and I'm not kidding when I say it, the weapons of mass destruction are highly processed, pesticide sprayed, high glycemic, low fiber, food-like substances stored in plastic containers. They're ruining our health. If I'm right, and I'm not the only one who's published this. There's been, I think, 20 other scientists. As your weight goes up, the size of your brain goes down. It's like, oh my God, if 70% of us are overweight, it's the biggest brain drain in the history of the United States. In fact, it's a national security crisis because they're not as many people are eligible to sign up for military service because we just have an unhealthy population. And if I...
Okay, good morning. Okay. I dimmed my super bright light so that I won't look like a ball of shine up here. But good morning, everybody. I'm Megan of Megan's Plant Boutique. And I do this morning yoga every morning. Thank you, Ramirez, for all the roses. I appreciate all your time and attention. Thanks for coming. I saw you register the other day too, so thanks for doing that. So after I finish my morning flow and I do finish the motivational speech, today we're not actually finished. The speaker today is Dr. Daniel Amen. And he's talking about health theory, and he's saying there are 7 risk factors that destroy your brain. So this was on YouTube from the Impact Theory, which is also a Discord channel. Again, that speaker is Dr. Daniel Amen.